Welcome to this explainer covering Polymer Bazaar's polyethylene market intelligence for the fourth week of August 2026. If you're navigating the global polymers landscape right now, well, you already know how incredibly volatile things have been. We've got a lot of critical data to unpack today regarding supply, demand, and pricing shifts globally. So let's jump right in. Here's our agenda for today. 1. Global market overview. 2. China's supply and demand. 3. Indian bazaar updates. 4. Converter buying pulse. And 5. Our strategic purchase opinion. Section 1, Global Market Overview, the Sluggish West. Across the Western Hemisphere, the prevailing wind this week is exceptionally dull demand, with a noticeable lack of buying interest. We're seeing a distinct reluctance from buyers to build up their inventories, and that hesitation is sending ripples straight through the pricing tiers. The data brilliantly illustrates the downward pressure we're talking about. Just look at those fast Houston numbers. Prices for HDPE plummeted by a whopping $65, landing at $1,005 a metric ton. LD and LL didn't fare much better, dropping $55 and $43 respectively. Europe, is a bit more of a mixed bag. It's definitely dull, and buyers aren't keen on building inventory. But FDNWE prices for LL and HDPE actually managed to remain stable, even as LD dipped slightly by €9. Now, when we look at the US versus Turkey, we see this really interesting parallel, but with a major twist. Both markets are experiencing dull purchasing environments with pretty much zero buying interest. But Turkey? They're additionally plagued by ongoing logistical issues, and these bottlenecks are actively impacting their CFR pricing. For instance, while their LD prices actually crept up by $34, their HDPE and LL both took a $39 hit. It just goes to show how logistical friction can really compound an already sluggish demand environment. Moving on to Section 2, China's supply and demand, a sudden tightening. Shifting over to Asia builds a completely different narrative. Because while the West is dealing with an overabundance of quiet, the East is navigating a very different kind of challenge. In stark contrast to the West, China is actually seeing a slight improvement in demand. However, it is a highly price-sensitive demand, meaning buyers are strictly preferring low-priced materials. But here's the real friction point. These buyers are facing unusually tight supply, purely because of recent plant shutdowns. When you have improving demand colliding with sudden factory closures, things get very interesting very quickly. You can see this dynamic perfectly reflected right here in their spot prices. LD is sitting highest at 10,500 RMB per metric ton. Meanwhile, HD is at 8,600 and LL is holding at 8,450 RMB. The supply tightness is basically keeping a firm floor under these spot prices, even with buyers aggressively hunting for bargains. Section 3, Indian Bazaar Updates. Importers and rates. Zooming into the local Indian market, we're tracking a new overseas import offer assessed at around $1,270 per metric ton for September HDPE injection cargoes. But those overseas offers are just one piece of the puzzle. The crucial point on every importer's radar this week is the Indian Customs revised exchange rate, which became effective on August 21st. They've pushed the import rate up by 45 paise, bringing it to 96.50 rupees per dollar. For anyone calculating landed cost right now, this shift immediately changes the math on those incoming September cargoes. It's also worth noting, for the broader market, that the export rate was adjusted at the exact same time. It increased by 50 peso to land at 94.80 rupees per dollar. These dual adjustments are absolutely going to be key variables for both incoming raw materials and outgoing finished goods. As for local pricing, Reliance Industries Limited, or RIL, enacted a split revision on August 20th. They strategically raised prices for select LLD butene film, LDEC, and milk pouch, but they kept HD, LL, and other LD grades completely unchanged. This targeted approach tells us a whole lot about where local producers are seeing pockets of strength versus where they just need to incentivize steady movement. Section 4, Converter Buying Pulse, the reluctant procurements. Given those shifting exchange rates, the split local revisions, and that global sluggishness we talked about earlier, what's the actual sentiment on the factory floor right now? Well, this quote perfectly captures the stunted state of finished product offtake. Converters were in no mood to procure raw materials in excess of their immediate factory requirements. Because their own finished goods just aren't moving off the shelves at a healthy pace, converters are strictly staying away from bulk purchasing. They're buying exactly what they need for right now, and not a single pellet more. However, this extreme reluctance to buy is colliding head-on with tightening local availability. On the supply side in India, the market is experiencing noticeably less availability specifically for LD lamination, HD film, and LDIM grades. So you've kind of got a Mexican standoff happening here. Buyers don't want to buy, but for these specific grades, sellers barely have anything to sell. Which brings us to Section 5, Strategic Purchase Opinion, Navigating the Scarcity. So how do you play your hand when the market gives you such mixed signals? This collision between hesitant buyers and increasingly tight supply leads us directly to Polymer Bazaar's strategic purchase opinion for the week. The strategy here is remarkably clear. You have to separate your procurement approach into 2 steps. Step 1, secure those tight grades, your LD marmination, HD film, and LDIM immediately. Don't wait. Step 2, maintain your routine, strictly as-needed purchases for all the other well-supplied grades. Because the ultimate question you need to ask yourself as we close out August is this: will local producers raise ex-works prices for those tight grades before September? With local supply tightening up the way it is, won't producers inevitably hike their prices? Securing your requirements for those specific scarce materials right now might just be the most profitable decision you make all month. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.